Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. It's a solo episode, this one. No Robbie, no Adam. So I'm just going to get into it like I did when the Seahawks similarly lost in humiliating fashion to the Niners. I'm just going to tell you what I think. Send your super chats in because the more super chats I get, I'm just not just going to be me waffling on for the whole of this thing. But I'm going to be honest with you today because that's not good enough. What we saw from the Seahawks is not good enough. I think the fans who attended in the stadium, the fans who are watching it at home, the fans like me who stay up all night and spend a lot of money to be able to pay and watch these games every single week deserve a lot more from this franchise. And that has to act as a wake-up call to ownership and to the general manager because this team is not going anywhere. You cannot go from there today, tweak a couple of things, and suddenly end up getting to where you need to go. We are talking about the complete restructure of this team. They have got some good players. I am not suggesting that the Seahawks are hopeless, that they're the worst team in the NFL, that they don't have any talent. Clearly they do. Clearly they do have some good players, in particular at skill positions. But the makeup of this team is not conducive with success at all. And unless they commit to reshaping the team into a roster that can be successful, this is what you're going to get. You are going to get a team that is very capable of going and playing a very similar team. Like the Atlanta Falcons and the Seahawks are the Spider-Man meme, pointing at each other. That's what they are. So they can go and play Atlanta in a dome, on the road, and get a nice win. And we can all spend the rest of the week overreacting to that. And the Seahawks can go and make a trade on a rental, and they can act like they're just a little tweak in, a little tweak there, and you'll win the NFC West. The reality is what we saw today. That is 3 straight home defeats. It is embarrassing losses to the Giants, to the Niners, and now to the Bills. They look disorganized. They don't have any identity. They're not tough. They're easy to play against. They are 19-19 in front of fans at Lumen Field since 2019. They are 500 at home in front of fans since 2019 in the last 5 years. The home field advantage is completely gone. It's completely gone. Teams enjoy coming and playing in Seattle. Here's something the franchise has got to wake up and actually deal with. The franchise has actually got to wake up and realize that you have a bunch of season ticket holders who are using their season tickets as side hustle. Whether it's paying for the mortgage, whether it's paying for a lovely holiday, whether it's paying for a midlife crisis motorbike or a sports car, whether it's putting kids through college, whatever it is, you've got a bunch of fans who are using their season tickets as a side hustle, and they are flooding them with away supporters. And it's just adding to what is otherwise just this destruction of everything that was built up with Quest Field and then CenturyLink Field and now Lumen Field. And it's hard to get it back without major action now. And look, why am I talking about the fans? Because that is the least of the issues here. What is that? What was that team performance? The defense can't do anything early in games. And unless the offense comes out and actually puts some drives together and gets out of its own way, then the defense just never gets an angle on the game. And then the offense, if it stumbles and bumbles out of the gate, is always playing catch up and chasing things. And just look at the embarrassing things that happened in this game. Like I made a little list of it in my blog post. If you'll just give me a second to go and get it up. And this was just off the top of my head as I was putting this near 1,500 word article together. You'd got the center snapping the ball too high in the red zone. And it was very generous of Tom Brady, who thought everything was awesome today, by the way. Like everything was amazing. Like if that's the level of his broadcasting now that he's part owner of the Raiders, that he's just going to have to say everything is positive all the time. Not for me. So center snapping the ball too high. Then he stood on the quarterback's toes in the next red zone possession. You've got Geno Smith giving away a penalty for throwing a ball at a Bills defender like a petulant child. You've got 2 players fighting with each other after one of them, Derek Hall, made a stupid mistake to give away a penalty for a roughing the passer call. And I actually quite like Jaron Reed getting in Derek Hall's face. And I don't mind them fighting that much, but it's a bad look when you're getting your asses kicked to have 2 players fighting on the sideline. And then the one other thing I mentioned, and I could have mentioned more, was D. Williams. Why is he still on the roster? Muffing yet another kick. I mean, come on. They just didn't look ready to play. Like, there's so many different things to get through. I'm just going to get into the super chats because I need sort of time to process in my head the order in which I want to talk about things, because this is becoming a consistent theme now where they just don't look ready to play. We've definitely got a consistent theme is what happens week to week. Here's what happens every single week for the Seahawks right now. Mike McDonald does a press conference, as does Ryan Grubb, and they talk about the importance of running the ball, the importance of getting Ken Walker involved in games, how they want their identity to be based around the running game. And then generally what happens is they run for 32 yards like they did today, and the Bills run for 166. You are getting destroyed in the trenches week after week. If you want to be a serious football team, you have to be better in the trenches. You need somebody who can wreck a game on the defensive line. The Seahawks do not have that. They do not have anybody. They have nice players. They have Boyer Mayfield. He can create a sack. He can create a pressure. So can Derek Hall. So can Leonard Williams. They don't have a game wrecker, somebody that you just think, oh my God, we're playing them this week. I mean, look at today. Like, Josh Allen did not face anywhere near enough pressure today. But the problem is that Mike McDonald was supposed to be coming here. If it wasn't because one player was going to generate all this, he was going to generate it with his scheming, whether it was going to be creative blitzing, whether it was going to be sort of little technical things about giving confusing quarterbacks with looks. Like, what is the Mike McDonald defense right now? What is he actually bringing to the table with this unit? And in the past, you could blame injuries. You could blame a short week. What's the excuse today? What exactly is he bringing to the table as a coach right now? And then on the offense, we want to get Ken Walker involved. They come out and run and throw the ball 3 times. At halftime, they'd run the ball like 6-7 times and thrown it 13 times, twice as many. They're throwing more times than any other team in the entire league, yet they say they want to be a running team. Like, what are they doing here? It's just not acceptable. And, the more that you sort of see games like this, you do have to start asking questions as to whether or not, I think John Schneider is a good general manager. And I think you can go through a lot of the complaints that people will have about players they've drafted or positions they've not drafted. And you can make an argument, well, they should have drafted him. And you can also make an argument, well, who should they have taken? Like, I don't think Devin Witherspoon right now is living up to his reputation as a top 5 pick. I think his reputation is up here, and I think his actual play is down here. But when you actually look at I had a look at it while I was watching the game, I was thinking, who could they have had instead? And there's not really a standout obvious option there. So there's lots of things like that you can make a case against John Schneider and for. But what you can't make an excuse for is coming to the offseason and knowing that the offensive line was still an issue, going through the bulk of free agency, then coming out the other side of that and going, we'll just see what's left at left guard. Laken Tomlinson, he'll do. We'll just bring him in and he can just be the left guard this year. And then going through the summer, do you know what? The center position's not very good. What we'll do is we'll just sign someone right at the start of camp who's been injured and had a horrible ACL injury, and there was doubts about whether he could play again, and we'll just insert him as center. Because what we do in Seattle is we change the center every single season. Every single season, we change the center. And then what we're going to do is we're going to draft a right guard who it turns out isn't strong enough to play right guard in the NFL. And what we're going to do is rotate him with Anthony Bradford every single week, and then both of them can be awful. What is this? That's not how you build an offensive line. That's not how you build a team that you say wants to be physical up front and beat teams up. To come into this season with that and expect that, yeah, it's fine, we'll just create our identity off that offensive line is deluded. It's absolutely deluded. And, they can't run the ball. Geno has been one of the few players who's actually played with any kind of consistency and any kind of production this year. But he's also not someone that needs to be paid $50 million a year or $45 million a year in the next 8 months. He isn't. And the last thing the Seahawks should be doing right now with this team is paying a quarterback a lot of money. Like, no, they're not ready. They're not close. They're just there. They're just a make up the numbers team. They're a team that will win a game like they are in Atlanta, and everybody will get carried away and they'll flatter to deceive, and everyone will be talking very positively. And and everyone kind of gets like, are they going to win the NFC West and who's going to stop them? And we heard all that chatter this week. And then they go and have a game like this, and it brings everybody back down to earth with a bang again. They are 500 right now. They're only 4-4 because they had the benefit of playing Bo Nix in his debut NFL game at home in the first game of the season. having had all summer to prepare to play a rookie in his first start of the season. And they didn't play very well in the first half in that game. Then they got the Patriots, who were awful, and they just won that game. And then they got to play the Dolphins with Tua out for the first week with Tua out. Like this, they wouldn't be 4-4 if they actually played some proper teams at the start of the season. They'd be like a 1 or 2 win team right now. Like that's the reality of this situation. And when I said on Puck's show on Wednesday that I think they'd benefit from a 6-10 season because it might just act as a slap in the face to sort of show or shine a light on the reality of where this team and this franchise is. A lot of people gave me pelters, which is kind of understandable because they just beat Atlanta. People don't want to hear that kind of talk. They traded for Ernest Jones and they beat Atlanta, and all people wanted to hear was everything was great. But I did not think before or after that Atlanta game that everything was great. I've had concerns about how this team's been built since the start of the year. And I can happily, when I'm wrong, hold my hands up and say I was wrong. I thought Mike McDonald would be a better head coach, a better defensive head coach, if nothing else, than he has shown so far in this year. It hasn't worked out as I was expecting after 8 games. Doesn't mean that he can't work things out, but right now I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in Ryan Grubb. I'm disappointed in John Schneider for how this team looks that he has built. And I am wondering whether there will ever be the change that is necessary now, because here's a point that I made after the Niners game on a number of podcasts, including my own. When you change coach and GM, the GM is minded to go, okay, I didn't draft any of these guys. I didn't sign any of these guys. I'm going to be honest. If I don't think him, and him are going to be part of what I want to build for my identity, then I'm going to move them on. I'm not going to sign them. I'm not going to pay them massive money. I'm just going to move on. And then you rebuild and you reshape the team in your image. That is what the Lions did. They came in, they just basically, they got rid of Stafford and got a load of picks and Jared Goff for him. And they said, we're totally rebuilding. And we're going to go through some pain, but we're rebuilding. We're going to start like root and branch from the start. We're going to build up. And now look at the team that they've got, because they did that. The Seahawks have got rid of Carroll, but are they prepared to have the honest conversation about how this roster has been constructed? Because the person who constructed it is still in his job in John Schneider. Now, maybe John Schneider is willing to do that, but I don't know if he is or not. And we won't have that answer until A, somebody either asks him that kind of question and he answers it with a degree of openness and honesty, or B, we just have to wait to the offseason and see. Because as I'm sitting here right now, I don't want the Seahawks to go and spend $30 million plus a year on a receiver in the offseason, however good that receiver is. I don't think that would be a good investment decision on the roster, because the team is not being built properly. And that's a huge chunk of money to invest in staying the same for me. I think you'd be better off sort of finding ways to build the trenches and go in a different direction. I don't think there's any point in paying Geno Smith a whopping contract extension and going, hey, he's played okay, he's done pretty good. Yeah, great. Let's give him a massive contract extension to take him through to the age of 37, because I don't see the point in that. This team it's not on the path to glory. It's not just a nudge and a nurdle here, a good draft pick here, a good free agent signing here, a good little trade for a 4th rounder here. And oh, look, there you go. You're an NFC contender. It's miles away. There is so much more that needs to be done. It's not tough. It's not physical. It's not got an identity. It doesn't have enough leadership on the field or on the sidelines right now. And these are all big, big problems. And ownership has to embrace this and has to accept we're in a bit of trouble here. Because not so long ago, under Paul Allen, this was one of the top franchises. And then they had a team 10 years ago that lived up to that. This is a top franchise and the product on the field is awesome. And now the product on the field stinks. The product in the stands stinks because fans are just giving the tickets to Bills fans as a side hustle. There is no magic with this team anymore. They're just toddling along. They're just sort of moving along. They're just like the Falcons. They're just like those teams that just kind of make up the numbers. Never too bad to be awful, to initiate the kind of change that you need. Never good enough to actually get excited and be a contender. And this week, off the back of that Falcons game, I allow myself to look forward to this. What are the Seahawks going to look like today against the Bills? I can't wait to see them at home against a proper team. I think if they'd gone to Buffalo, it's such a tough game, I wouldn't have expected anything. And if they'd lost like that in Buffalo, I'd have gone, it's a tough game. Okay, they're not ready for that. But the fact that it's at home meant, okay, now you can go and give them a game. And I was fully prepared for them to lose a tight game by a field goal, by a touchdown, whatever it was. back and forth, a battle, and maybe just Josh Allen's too good. Maybe the Bills are too good. They got the doors blown off, man. They were humiliated. They were embarrassed. They're embarrassed. That was embarrassing. I don't want to hear any more talk about winning the NFC. Like winning this NFC West. If the Seahawks win this NFC West, it'll be by default. Who wants to win by default? And I'm telling you now, the Niners will sort themselves out. They'll blow up Dallas today. Like the Cardinals, I think they're above the Seahawks in the standings. Now let me have a look. NFC standings, because I'm pretty sure the Cardinals, having beaten Miami, are now 4-4 as well. So let's have a look. Yeah, they're above the Seahawks. So if the Rams win in Seattle next week, and if the Niners win today against Dallas, the Seahawks will be in last place in the NFC West. They'll be in last place. So there you go. To go into the bye week. There you go. That's where it is. Let's get into some of these super chats. Thank you for those who've sent them in. And they've not come in order for me. So apologies if you sent yours very early. I'm just going to read them out on my list. Send them in because, like I say, it's a solo mission tonight. And it will give me something to bounce off. So send you super chats in. This is from Jan. Thank you, Jan. You have one of the best running backs in football, but are 30th in rush attempts. How much is this a result of bad rush blocking and how much on bad game plan by Grubb? Thanks for your great coverage, Rob. Thank you, Jan. I think it's everything. I think it's everything that you've said. I think it's game planning. So an example of that is today, coming out and throwing the ball 3 times. It's when they're in the red zone, they don't seem to have any creativity. When they're like in the, let's say inside the 5-yard line, they just seem to run up the gut. There doesn't seem to be any creativity whatsoever in the red zone with their running. They have somebody who is best running to the perimeter, and yet it almost seems like the running back has to make all of that happen when he is bouncing outside, reversing back. Like they don't seem to do a good enough job of finding situations where he can get outside. So I think it's the game plan. I mean, just look at the Giants game. They didn't like run the ball at all. Like a week after running the ball very, very well, and Ken Walker exploded against Detroit, and it was the same today. Come out throwing the ball. First half, 13 passes, 6-7 runs. You know, that's bad game planning. And then the run blocking is terrible. Like the run blocking is terrible. The pass blocking is terrible. The offensive line is terrible. So it's everything. It's absolutely everything. I'm not a fan of what they do with this no huddle, go up to the line, and then they look as if they're going to go no huddle. Like, we're going to catch the, and the commentators fall for it every time. Sorry, this is a throat clearing, but I have to say this. I am so bored of commentators saying things that are just assumed. So at the end, Kevin Burkhardt, who is a good commentator, said, well, the Seahawks have lost 3 games in a row. This is most unusual for them. They're 19-19 with fans in that stadium in the last 5 years, Kevin. It is not unusual at all. It is not unusual. It was like yesterday on the ESPN broadcast of LSU against Texas A&M, where they went, well, we're so used to seeing LSU have great pass protection with these 2 offensive tackles that all of the internet has decided are going to be first-round picks. They've been playing that crap all year. Like, stop just assuming things. Research, do some homework. So, like, it's just not good. It's just not, the offense is not good. They get up to the line. They do the no huddle. Oh, look, they're going to go no huddle. And then they don't. They back out of it. And everyone looks to the sideline like it's the Pac-12. And then they go and run a play. Everything seems a little gimmicky. It just seems a bit soft and crap, if you ask me. Like, if you want to be tough, physical run team, build the offense to do that. But they haven't. So, sorry, there's a long winded way of answering your question, Jan, but thank you for your super chat. Baller MJ31 says, this coaching staff needs to get control. I could deal with losses when you're building a new culture and identity, but they're pouting and they're undisciplined. Completely agree. Completely agree. You can accept loss. I can accept losses. I can accept losing. I can accept losing to the Giants at home. The Giants are terrible. I can accept losing if it's a close game. If it's like, oh, it's back and forth. And if the Giants just play really well and you play well and the Giants just that little bit better on the day or had a ball bounce their way, I could kind of accept that. They were crap against the Giants. They were terrible against the Niners team, who looked terrible against the Chiefs last week. I've lost to the Rams. I've lost to the Cardinals. They hammered the Seahawks. Hammered the Seahawks in Seattle. Again, 6 in a row. And this, like, it's embarrassing. It's not just that they lose, they get embarrassed. They embarrass us as fans. It's humiliating. We deserve better than this. The team's awful. The way that they're playing is just, it's just not good enough. Like, there's losing and there's losing this way. K Sizzle says, I'll be the one to say it. This game wasn't on coaching. This was on players not executing and making dumb mistakes. Snapping the ball over Geno's head and tripping him up, Hall's roughing the passer, etc. Yeah. Okay, but what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, if you are not prepared to play, if you are making basic, stupid high school errors, is that all totally on the players? Or does coaching come into it? Do coaches bear responsibility for your team appearing to make an endless stream of stupid mistakes? Like that, the buck stops with the coach at the end of the day. So I get what you're saying. I still think that what you've done there is you've kind of focused on, okay, there's been a whole bunch of player mistakes. You've apportioned blame to the players. That's fine. It still doesn't explain why the team was bad in other areas, why their game plans were bad, why the defense can't stop the run, 166 yards given up again today, why they say they want to run the ball, 30-odd yards rushing themselves. So that's just one aspect of it. If you want to blame the errors on the players, that's fine. Now let's run through the other things that you can apportion blame to the coaches. And it all combines together to make a cake of shite, which is what we saw today. Loma Boy, thank you for super chat. One of the most humiliating and unprepared efforts from this team since Jim Mora. We looked outclassed in every phase. Where is the leadership? Where is the urgency? That was atrocious. Completely agree. I actually think that was worse than, I don't know. I mean, I remember the Jim Mora era. Some of you will not have been around then, not been Seahawks fans, not been old enough to remember that. I remember it, and it was pretty bad. But the thing about the Seahawks under Jim Mora is it became pretty clear after about 4 games that they had a terrible roster. That they had a roster that was, I'd say, something close to where the Patriots are at the moment. Like, that, it was just really, really bad. And then Matt Hasselbeck got injured, and you had Seneca Wallace at quarterback, and it just really sort of, that was it then. Like, they just had a really, really terrible roster. And the coach was like, they had the Olindo Mare mess. You had the receivers going on the radio and complaining about coaching. It unraveled very quickly for Jim Mora, but the roster was bad. Mora was bad. And it was very clear during that first season that a change was required. And I was one of the few people at the time, like the Seattle media, as they do. Oh, you can't fire a coach after a year. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do any of this. I was saying, they've got to move on. They have to make a change. This is not going to work out. It's just done. And they did. And thankfully, the rest is history. Pete Carroll came in, greatest Seahawks head coach of all time. I am not there yet with Mike McDonald. I am not going to say that he's Jim Mora and needs to be fired after 1 year. But that loss today, you put that, for me, with the Niners loss and the Giants loss this season. You put it with the Steelers loss at the end of last season. And you put it with the Rams loss in 2017. For me, that was as humiliating today as the Rams loss in 2017, because that Rams loss in 2017, you had a shell of a team out. Like, there were players playing hurt who shouldn't have been on the field, like Bobby Wagner, I think, or KJ Wright. One or both of them was really injured and shouldn't have been out there. But they were so badly injured, they had to be. And it was awful, and it spiraled and spiraled and spiraled. And to lose with the majority of your players healthy today off the back of a good win last weekend is unacceptable. So I'd put it, Mike McDonald's already got 3 terrible losses on his resume. He can't keep stacking these losses. He can't. And part of me wonders whether or not having a first-year head coach, and listen, again, I am not saying for a second that Mike McDonald should be fired, or the coordinators. But maybe with hindsight, having a head coach who had been a defensive coordinator in the NFL for 2 seasons. 2 seasons. Not 5, not 10, not 3. He'd been a defensive coordinator in the NFL for 2 seasons. Maybe putting him with an offensive coordinator who'd never coached in the NFL at all was a bad idea. was a bad idea. And then you've got a defensive coordinator who's never been a defensive coordinator before, just been a positional coach. You've got a special teams coordinator who's worked for his uncle and his dad, but has not been, I don't think he's been an NFL special teams coordinator before. That's starting to feel like there's too much inexperience there. Too much inexperience that just plonking Leslie Frazier on the staff is not going to overcome. That's my feeling today, and that they're not experienced enough. So what do you do about that? Do you just ride it out, accept the suck right now, and then hope that they all, as with experience, come back next year? But if you come back next year and it's this again, well, that's the problem. Like when you are a team like this, and you are a franchise like this who is constantly sort of believing, oh, no, we're not in a rebuild. We're going for it. We're going for it. Like you never take a step back. You're always like trying to go for it. And then nothing changed. That tends to be that nothing changes. That I always think the best place to be is either contender trying to stay a contender, or crap and with aspirations of being a contender. And the Seahawks are kind of in that middle ground at the minute. Think they're better than they are. Think they're closer than they are. Today, reality check. But will he take it? Reality checks in the past. I've just got this really bad feeling they're going to have an Atlanta-style win at the end of the season. Everyone's going to go, roll it back next year. Because that's what a lot of people do with this fan base. Hawks fan Matt Man says, this team is confounding. I understand it's a new coaching staff and blah, blah, blah. But should we not expect something better than this? Matt, thank you for the super chat. The answer to your question is yes. Every fan should expect better than this. There's nothing wrong with saying that. There's nothing wrong with saying, I'm not sure whether that trade in the week, the compensation chimes with what the Titans paid for Ernest Jones and why are you paying a fourth rounder. There's nothing wrong with saying, yeah, do you know what? That Atlanta win was great. Good win. But let's see what they do next week. There's nothing wrong with any of this. Chad Lewis says, don't even know where to start. I was excited for this season to see change and growth. We looked like we did under Pete. Gashed on defense, sloppy on offense, and undisciplined all over. I completely agree, Chad. This is exactly, it's this level of football that made many of us want to move on from Pete Carroll. Somebody sent me a message after the Niners game saying, I hope you're happy. This is, you called for this. You're responsible. You have to own getting rid of Pete. As if Pete Carroll was coaching today, that would have been any different. Like, Pete was done. Pete was not going to be fixing this. Clint Hurt was not going to fix this. Shane Waldron was not going to fix this. Change was necessary. Every single time we talked about change being necessary, we said that doesn't mean that change is going to guarantee anything. And it's possible that you could appoint the wrong people. And if that happens, you've just got to accept that and then do it again and do it again until you get the right people. That's sport. And when you watch a performance like that, you end up having questions like, have they got the right people? Or is this roster just built in such a bad way that no coach could come in and turn this around, and that really huge changes are needed? I'm probably leaning more towards that right now, but I have been underwhelmed and disappointed with Mike McDonald so far. I expected the defense to look better than this. I did not expect them to be this bad. I expected more pressure. I expected run defense to be better. I expected more from Ryan Grubb than this. It's been a huge disappointment all around. So they also bear some challenge and responsibility for that. And we should ask those questions. Joe Schmobies says, Geno crying on the sidelines is unacceptable. Russell Wilson had his flaws, but he was a leader who rallied the troops. Geno or any quarterback must act like a pro, even down 50-0. I mean, the biggest problem I had with Geno today was the stupid penalty when he threw the football at the Bills defender. You are 34 years old, Geno, and you've been in the league for a long time. You don't do that. It was one penalty after another on that series, and that was one of the stupidest penalties. And look, there was lots of stupidity in the performance today. That was the worst thing. Geno's emotional. Geno's gonna wear his heart on his sleeve. It's a good and bad thing. My position on Geno Smith has been consistent throughout. And I think it's the right opinion. And I get a bit tired hearing the people saying he's awful, he's useless. No doubt. I think I've seen a super chat already come in saying, like, get rid of Geno. Like, he was the big issue today. He was one of the issues today. Everybody was the issue today. Like, who came out of today with any like shine on them? Like, everybody was the problem today. But he's not the worst quarterback ever. He doesn't need to be replaced tomorrow by Sam Howell. He doesn't. You also don't pay this guy a massive contract extension. Every time I hear that, I just want to sort of, if I had any hair, I'd pull it out. Maybe I should pull beard hair or something. Like, I'm still seeing it now. Like, who are these people who think, yeah, do you know what the right thing to do for the Seahawks in this form is to suddenly spend a massive amount of money on Geno Smith's 36 and 37-year-old years in the NFL? Like, they're not in a position to. Unless you have like a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes or somebody like that, you shouldn't be paying a quarterback right now. Like, you're just going to end up as one of those teams like the Jags and the Dolphins and one of these others that are paying an absolute fortune for a quarterback who's not tilting them, like making up for all of the mistakes elsewhere and tilting them forward. And, there's a lot of revisionist history with Russ because of the way he left, because of what's happened in Denver since. Russell Wilson papered over a ton of cracks. And people just, it was always Pete Carroll who made Russ because he went to Denver, it didn't work out. No. Russell Wilson was extremely talented. And Russell Wilson carried this team when the LOB had gone for a number of years until, I think it's pretty clear, physically, he was not the same player after towards the end of his time in Seattle and his time in Denver. And I don't think he is now, but I thought he played very well for the Steelers last week. He was capable, though, of elevating the team when things were awful around them. I think Geno has got that ability sometimes, but not at with the consistency that Russ has had it over his time in Seattle, where he did cover over lots of cracks. Be Calm C clearly says, happy birthday to me then. Boom, embarrassment. Well, happy birthday, Be Calm C clearly. Thank you for listening to this on your birthday. I hope it's therapeutic in any kind of way. Thank you for the super chat. Sorry that the Seahawks delivered a turd sandwich for you on your birthday. You deserved better. We all did. Peter says, just some cash for your troubles. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that. Thank you for the super chats. Sneaks 211 says, Everton have structured their season ticket sales. People can't offload them for profit. If a team as badly run as Everton can do that, so can the Seahawks. Completely agree. They've got to do something about it. Like, it's embarrassing now. Like, I thought, it's just the Niners and the Steelers last year because they've got massive fan bases all over the world. Like, the Bills are doing it now. They've got a big fan base, but the Bills are traveling. The Rams. I mean, the biggest problem with the Rams, if they have like a lot of fans in Seattle next time. The Seahawks got to do something about it, though. They've got to sort through their season tickets to stop people just reselling them to opposing fans. They have to do something about this. Otherwise, they don't care enough about it. But they have to look into everything right now as to why this team is not delivering. And the fact that they're so crap at home is something that they should be looking at, like whether or not too many road fans in the stadium is an issue. Mike says, total lack of leadership from Geno. Cut everyone. I mean, total lack of leadership from everybody, Mike. From everybody. Noah says, what prospects will make the biggest difference? If you're talking about the draft, Noah, this is the crappiest draft since 2013. It might even be worse than 2013. There is no quick fix solution. That does not mean that you bury your head in the stand and you don't do anything and you just roll it back. You have to immediately say, where do we invest our resources? Who are we paying? What is a 3-year to 5-year plan to win a Super Bowl, as opposed to just tweak, go into the summer. What else do we need to tweak? Get a center, get a left guard. Let's go into the season, get a linebacker. No. Proper long-term plan. And that does not, for me, involve paying massive contracts to players, fiddling with your cap all the time. Oh, we need some money. I know what we'll do. We'll make it harder to cut Draymond Jones. I mean, what? The Jones contract. But then after a crap first season, doubling down on reworking his deal this year to make it harder to move on from him is just classic Seahawks malpractice in the cap, which is what they've had for years. Oh my God. How has that happened? How? How did they do that before they even had a look at him play? Like, God, in this system, he's awful. Awful. Sean says this regime needs its own QB and needs to flush the lower 2/3 of the roster. There are 10 to 12 guys that should be here and the rest gone. The problem is that you are now getting to an off-season where you have a bunch of players from the 2022 draft where you had more picks because of the Russell Wilson trade who are now going to be saying, oh, I quite fancy being paid. And you have to make a call on that. So Charles Cross will expect to get paid. Is he worth big money? Is he? Is Ken Walker worth? Yeah, I think Ken Walker's very good. Are you willing to pay him a massive contract? Boye Mafe? Tariq Woolen? Like, you've got players that could be good, could be great, could be worth keeping. Are they worth paying massive contracts to? DK Metcalf, you have to make a call. You either have to pay him or you have to trade him so someone else can pay him. His contract, his cap hits 30-odd million next year. That's like 36 million. So you have to do something. You have to lower that, either by paying him or by moving him on. What are you going to do? Do you just keep going year after year after year with Geno Smith, or do you try something else? Do you go cheaper at quarterback, pay somebody on the O-line instead? Or do you keep Geno as your bridge until the golden goose arrives, whenever that will be? And when will that be? Quarterback draft's not very good next year. Some of these stars that everyone was going, oh, wow, in a couple of years, Arch Manning and the guy at Nebraska and the guy at Tennessee don't look that good. So what's the plan? It's difficult. It's really difficult. JP Lester says, I think we need to rip the Band-Aid off the Geno contract and start over at the QB position. Put that money in the O-line. I still believe in Mike McDonald to make this defense better. Go Hawks. JP, I have no faith in him to make this defense better right now. He's got to show it. Right now, I am not going to defend him. I am not going to say that he will work it out. I have got no expectations other than I'm going to sit and see what happens, because so far he has shown he cannot get this defense going. And maybe he will over time. But at the minute, it does feel a little bit like he's a little bit in over his head, that being the defensive coordinator for a very established team like the Ravens, with a lot of good players and a very experienced head coach who is making the big decisions, and you just have to work the defense and put the pieces in the right places. And by the way, you're playing with a lead most weeks because Lamar Jackson, the MVP, is on the offense. You know, that was always my point why I preferred Ben Johnson when we were going through the coaching thing. It was nothing against Mike McDonald. It's just that I thought he runs the offense in Detroit. He runs the offense. His scheming's very, very good. He's making it happen. He's not working with a very experienced head coach. Mike McDonald's working for Harbaugh and the Ravens with all of their talent and Lamar Jackson. And he was making it happen. And Ben Johnson was like, the reason the Lions were succeeding was because of their offense, not because of their defense. And that was down to Ben Johnson. So that's why I wanted him. When it became evident it wasn't going to be him, I was totally willing and happy to see Mike McDonald come in. I even got excited at one point. Like right now, I'm very much in there. I'm going to wait and see what happens here. But it's going to take more than just ripping up the Band-Aid on the Geno contract. There's so many things that, like I say, you've got the big decisions to make on, do you pay DK? Do you invest the money elsewhere? How on earth do you fix the O-line? How do you fix the run defense? Like this Ernest Jones trade. So they give away the 4th-round pick for him, and they're going to pay him, and they keep it's like, well, what are you going to do then? Like, you're going to pay him like a massive contract? Like, what's the future? Like, do you have to do that now? Otherwise, it was a waste. Are you just going to let him go somewhere else and then hope that you get a 4th next year, the year after, whatever? You know, like, in a comp pick, I just don't understand the way that everything's built. Like, there's no sort of long-term planning here. Just going to roll in along every year. Callum says, our first drive is why I think Grubb has no place in the NFL. Refuses to run the ball because he isn't creative enough to scheme it properly. That's a real issue, the scheming on the offense. Half the games, I don't know what they're trying to do. Thank you, Callum, for that. Thank you, Jeffrey, for this. Why is no one talking about the OC hiding in the box? I've been saying it all season. Makes communication impossible, especially when things are bad. Jeffrey, the least of my worries is Ryan Grubb sat up in the box. It gives him a perspective to be able to see all of the field. That every college offensive coordinators up there in the booth. Many of the Bills offensive coordinators seem to have plenty of success up in the media suites today. He was up there as well. I have no problem with it. I have no issue with the coordinators being up there. The people who are calling the game, sort of seeing all of the field, it does make it a bit easier for me. I have no issue with that. I don't think he's hiding. I think it's where he should be. Be calm, see clearly with another one. Is it time to start over, reset everything? I think they need to rebuild the team in the form that they want to actually be built. If you want to call that resetting everything, then so be it. Thank you for the super chat. Christian says, it's obvious that DK missing was the problem today. Let's pay him the 30 million he's due, cut Geno and let him play wide receiver, quarterback, and maybe even D-line. Yeah, I a bit of gallows humor there. I appreciate that, Christian. And Kay Sizzle says, as much as I see the point of trading DK, man, it would suck seeing him in another jersey, and he would probably be great too. Yeah, it may well be. And it may be painful for the Seahawks. But the problem is that, you know, if you want to be the kind of team they say they want to be, and like if you look at this team the way they perform today, is like the answer 35 million a year to DK Metcalf, or 32 million a year, or 30 million a year to DK Metcalf. Maybe it is. But then where you're saving everything else? You know, if he's like, if you're going to do that, he has to be your guy, and he has to be number one receiver, rely on him every single week, and he delivers like Justin Jefferson does for the Vikings. And he doesn't do that. He has good games and bad games. And that's the problem. But it's not just about him. It's not just about Geno. It's like the O-line is not built properly. You have a soft underbelly of this team that you can be beaten in the trenches every single week. You get your arse kicked in the trenches every single week. And it is a problem. Somebody has said in the comments that Mike McDonald's defense was bad with the Ravens for a full year. No, it wasn't. He had the number 8 ranked defense and then the first ranked defense in his 2 years at Baltimore. He never had a full season with a bad defense. But, and I made this point in the articles before he was appointed, they played with a lead all the time. How often are the Seahawks playing with a lead right now? Like the offense stalls, the other team score points, you can't claw it back. That's what happens. The difference with Baltimore was Lamar Jackson and everybody else, MVP season last year, put a ton of points on the board, applied scoreboard pressure, you could tee off. That's what the Seahawks did in the second half against the Falcons. That game last weekend was as close to Baltimore-esque as Mike McDonald has had since being in Seattle, because the offense scored points. They took the run game away because they'd scored points, forced the ball into Kirk Cousins' hand, and then they pressured him. That's how the Ravens won with Mike McDonald. If the offense cannot score points and cannot get out of its own way and cannot stay on track, then, and if the other team can get after this defense, this Seahawks defense, it ends like we saw today, in a performance like that, because the defense cannot hold them at bay forever. In fact, some games they've done a decent job holding them at bay to allow the offense to find its rhythm. Denver, for example. But against good teams like the Bills, it ain't happening. The Bills will move the ball, they will score points, and they'll put all the pressure on the Seahawks offense. And when it's playing from behind, mistakes happen. I mean, Geno had one interception today on another tip pass. He threw another pass straight to a defender that could easily have been picked for a pick six and was dropped. And he had another, I think he had another dropped interception as well. So it could have been even worse. Could have been even worse. Someone has just said in the comments that it was the worst game in a decade easily. I think it's up there with the Rams 2017, that performance. Really do. Really, really do. I think one of the biggest shames, so I need to have a drink. I'm on my own and I've been talking non-stop for 45 minutes. The biggest disappointment for me is The Russell Wilson trade felt like an opportunity. Like, it was an exciting opportunity to like rebuild the team and, just launch a new era and sort of learn who the new stars were going to be and who you would have a jersey of and stuff like that, and who were going to be the next stars for the Seahawks. And I'm kind of sat here now, coming up to 3 years since the trade, as it will be in March, and there isn't really anybody. Like, there are good players. Like, I like Ken Walker, and I quite enjoy Derek Hall and Boye Mafe, but there's nobody on this team that I like. Oh, yeah, I love watching them play. When I watch a game like that, that is going to kill any excitement I have for the rest of the season. Like, there is no way I am going to Seattle to watch this team play like I did last year. No way. I even had a little look today, like, if they win today, can I sneak over for the Packers games? And no. No way. What a totally stupid idea that would be, to fly 5,000 miles to Seattle to watch this Seahawks team. There's nothing. There is nothing exciting about this team right now. Nothing. And there's a lot of people who, when they win a game like Atlanta, and they act like everything's great, everything's fantastic. Yeah, the trade made sense because they're going for it. And no. I don't think there's enough people being willing to be honest about where this team is. It needs to be restructured. And I was saying this before the Bills game, and I'm saying it after. This is not a reaction to today. I said this on Wednesday with Puck. This team is not built properly, and they need a reality check, maybe, to be prepared to make the changes they need to make. Sean sent another super chat. I really miss having dudes. This team is soft. Me too, Sean. It is soft. Who's a difference maker, man? Who's the difference maker? The physical difference maker, the tone setter, the guy that you look up to. The guy that when things weren't going well 10 years ago, you'd hand the ball to bloody Marshawn Lynch and he'd just run over somebody and you go, yes. There was a moment in the game where Ray Davis ran over a few people and the O-line shoved him across the line, and the whole of the Bills O-line were barking and yelling and just getting everybody going. And they were just like, we have taken your soul. We are the alphas on this field. And you lot, get back in that locker room. You're pathetic. That's what they were saying to the Seahawks. And they were right. They were absolutely right. Pathetic. An absolutely pathetic week effort. That's just, oh my word, there's just so many problems with this team. And ownership takes some responsibility for this as well. Ownership, GM, coaches, players, everybody. And listen, you've just got to ask yourself a question as a fan, okay? Do you want to have these honest conversations? Do you want to bury your head in the sand? Are you happy watching 500 football? Are you happy watching them team winning Atlanta 1 week, get a fuzzy feeling for a few days, and being embarrassed like this against the Bills? Or do you want to be great? I want to be great. I want to see the Seahawks be great. I don't want to just make up the numbers. And until they are great, I'm going to push for that. Because this is not good enough. Let me share the screen and show some of these numbers from the game today. And then if you have any super chats, I'm going to wrap up. I mean, we tend to do an hour. It's quite a challenge talking for an hour on your own. I'll probably do an hour. So if you've got another super chat, send them in, because we're getting towards the end. So these are the stats from the game. Let me see if I can just zoom in a little bit. There we go. So first downs, 29 to Buffalo, 17 to Seattle. Rushing first downs, 14 to the Bills, 2 for the Seahawks. Third downs. Oh, hang on. Why is that? Don't know why that was doing that. Third downs, 8 of 15 for the Bills, 1 of 7 for the Seahawks. Awful in both categories. And you can add another one to the Seahawks. It should be 1 and 8. And add one more there. So over 500 for third and fourth downs. Seahawks 1 of 8, third and fourth downs. Total yards, 4.45, 2.33. That's a Carroll breakdown there. 6.4 yards per play. Crazy. A very decent passing day, especially when you consider they rushed for 164 yards at 4.8 yards per carry. You are not good enough in the trenches. And that is added by that 32 rushing yards at 4.8 yards per carry versus 1.9. Red zone, 4 out of 5 for the Bills, 1 of 3 for Seattle. We know what the two. In fact, I think one of them was the field goal, which actually counts as a red zone, doesn't it? 2 turnovers to 1. Time of possession, awful. It's just horrendous. And it could have been worse. Like I said, that there was opportunities for other turnovers. There was opportunities for the Bills. I mean, yet Seattle had that one chance where Josh Allen dropped the ball and then kicked it, and then somehow the Bills got on top of it. But they didn't deserve that, the Seahawks. They didn't deserve to recover that. Jeffrey says, everyone was smelling their own farts after the Falcon game. Yes, they were. I knew this would happen. Zero leadership on the field. And that I do think there is a hubris element to this franchise. I think that they do think they are better than they are at times. I think they've thought over the years that they have got things right. I also think, to be fair with balance, that by and large, it is very easy to say they should have done this, or they should have drafted this, or they should have added this player, or whatever. And then when you actually look at the alternatives, it's not always obvious what they could have done differently. And I think from a GM's perspective, sometimes they can hold their hand up and go, well, hang on a minute, we did the evaluations. Everything about the process was sound. Everything about the grading was sound. Most teams in the league agreed with what we would have done the same as us in our situation. And now you're criticizing me for it. So I understand that. That's the difficulty that comes with running a front office and being a decision maker, that those kind of things can happen. But there's still no excuses for, like I said, going into the offseason, knowing you need to repair the O-line, knowing that you've got some holes to fill, and then sort of waddling through a free agency and going, who's left at left guard? Okay, I guess we'll sign Laken Tomlinson then. Having yet another starter at center, again, changing that position every single year, never finding any kind of solution there that is worthy of sticking around for even a second year. Having to sign someone who's been injured all year at the last minute. Playing musical chairs between Anthony Bradford and Christian Haynes at right guard. Like, this is not good enough. And things like that do warrant some criticism when you want to be a physical running team that wins in the trenches and you can't do it. And then on the other side of the ball, you've spent a lot of money on Draymond Jones and Leonard Williams and a first-round pick on Byron Murphy and 2 second-round picks on Maffei and Hall. You've spent too much money to be this bad up front, creating no pressure today and not being able to defend the run any time in any game. Every single team can run against the Seahawks. Darth says, sorry I'm late, but what an SHIT show. Yes, Darth. There are many 4-letter words that could be used to describe this game and this performance. Thanks to the super chat. Hawks fan Mattman says, hearing McDonald give us the same empty answers each week reminds me of what we grew sick of with Carroll. I've not listened to the press conference yet. I'll go and listen to it, but there'll be nothing forthcoming. There'll be nothing to glean from it. Not good. Not good at all. Just annoying, innit? Can you remember when the Seahawks were good and used to look forward to games? And used to have like that adrenaline rush right before the game kicked off. You thought, what's going to happen today? And when they used to win and they'd be great and they'd be fighting for the NFC, you would start a season really believing they were going to get to the Super Bowl. Can you remember those days? They were really cool, weren't they? I just take not being embarrassing at the minute. Noah says, I grew up in Washington. And Noah, thank you for that extremely generous super chat, by the way. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who sent a super chat as well. I grew up in Washington and flew to the game with a friend who'd never been to the stadium. Never been more disheartened in my life. The crowd was 40% Bills fans. The offense was anemic. And the match-going fans hate Geno. Worst performance I've seen in years. You could just take a clip of this of me reading that out or take a screenshot of this. That's the Seahawks. That's where this franchise is at. A disheartening performance that is humiliating, embarrassing, lacks toughness, lacks physicality. Nothing. Nothing to be proud of from that Seahawks performance. A crowd that, according to Noah, is 40% Bills fans, because you have a whole bunch of Seahawks fans who are using their tickets as a side hustle. No home field advantage, 3 straight home losses, 19-19 with fans in that stadium over the last 5 years. An anemic offense that doesn't know what it says it knows what it wants to do, but it can't. Defense, awful. Can't stop the run. No pressure. O-line stinks. Match-going fans hate Geno. Do you know why? Because when things go wrong, people point finger at the quarterback. Rightly or wrongly, people point the finger at the quarterback. When you have a great one, they get a little bit of leeway maybe, or maybe the expectation's even greater. When you don't have a great one, not saying Geno's not good, he's not great. People will look and say, where's our star? Where's our Josh Allen? Where's the guy who's going to get us out of this hole? Whether it's right or wrong, they're going to do that. And until the Seahawks have their guy at quarterback, it's going to keep happening. And you just go to all those other franchises. Ask Bears fans what it's like being in that world. Maybe they've got the answer now. Maybe they haven't. Go and ask the Washington Commanders fans. What's it like when you don't have the guy? And then every now and again, you get a little false dawn. You think, is this the guy? And it isn't. And you're still looking and you're still looking. And how are they feeling now they've got Jaden Daniels? It's a bad place to be. It's a really bad place to be. And that final line, worst performance I've seen in years, it's right up there. As I keep saying, it's up there with the Steelers last season. It's up there with the Giants and the Niners this year. It's up there with the 2017 hammering by the Rams, because that was a hammering. That was an embarrassment today. And unlike in 2017, they weren't playing with a shell of a team. They actually had guys out there today who should have been playing a lot better than they were. Noah, you have summed it up perfectly. Thank you. Brian sent one in, no comment, but thank you, Brian, for the super chat and the support. Really appreciated. Really, really appreciated. Darth says, I grew up in Washington as well. I remember going to the games as a kid. There were almost no opposing fans in the stadium because the place was sold out by loyal Seattle fans. What happened? The Seahawks became too good 10 years ago. Became a money spinner. Resale tickets dominate everything. I want to go and see Chris Stapleton when he was in the UK. I think his tour's going on right now. And I can't get a ticket for that. But if I went on every resale website around here, I could pay 5 times more than face value ticket prices and go. I could pay £300, which is about $500 or whatever, to go and watch him perform, rather than the $90 or 90 quid and $110 it might have cost if I was paying face value. That's the way the world is right now, and people know it. So they keep these season tickets, charge through the roof prices for Bills fans who want the experience of going to Lumen Field. And they only get to go there once every 8 years or whatever it is. So, oh, what an opportunity to go to Seattle. And the rich ones will pay it. And then the next fan base and the next fan base and the next one puts the kids through college, pays for a nice holiday. That's what's wrong. I can remember my first game in Seattle, 2006. And Packers Monday Night Football. There were some Packers fans in that stadium. They were so far and away outnumbered by the Seahawks fans. It was a cauldron of noise. It was intense. I walked into that stadium and I had no connection to the Seahawks. I was just going because I was there and I got a ticket for that game and I was going to go and watch it. And the minute I walked into that stadium and saw that flag go up and I felt the noise of the crowd and the connection between the team and the fans, I thought, this is for me. This is my team. This is everything. And I became obsessed with the Seahawks as a consequence of that. If the Seahawks played the Packers on Monday Night Football now, the whole entire front section of Lumen Field would be full of people wearing cheese hats. It would be a sea of green and yellow. It is so different, and it is a massive crying shame. And the franchise has to do something about it. So the people behind the scenes can deal with that. And the GM and the coaches need to have a very serious and honest conversation with themselves about the product on the field. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. If you have any final super chats, send them in right now because I'm about to end. I think this has been one of the, I'll sort of end with this unless there are any super chats. I think this has been one of the most discouraging weekends of football I've watched in a while, because I was watching the college football yesterday and I just thought, guys, another player's got injured, and so many players have got injured who could theoretically be interesting players for the draft. And then I'm watching players like, you watch like Garrett Nussmeier, for example. You think, wow, what a first half. And then second half, he was atrocious. And you sort of looking through and you're thinking, who are the first round picks in this draft? I can't see any. So it's not even like I can go, the best thing for the Seahawks is to get a top 10 pick, because then they can get him or whatever. They can go and get this amazing offensive. There's nothing. There's nothing. There's no solace in this draft. And watching that yesterday, it was a pretty crap slate of games. Like it was awful. Like even like close, like Vanderbilt, Texas was close. It wasn't fun to watch. And then you watch this game here today, and you're thinking, oh my God, the Seahawks are bad. Like I bet even Bills fans couldn't believe it. I bet they were sat there second off a bit bored. Maybe watching Red Zone instead. It was so easy. The Bills have got a tough physical football team with a great quarterback, a defensive head coach who gets his unit playing. What do we have? We have that, what we've watched today. Brian sent another super chat in. Really appreciate that, Brian. I have been a season ticket holder since I was 7. I'm 27 now. I've never been more pissed at the fans, players, and management. I'll give Mikey a couple of years before I'm out on him, but right now I'm pissed. Yeah. I'm not going to put a time. Brian, really appreciate the super chat. I'm not going to put a time frame on Mike McDonald on I'm going to give him X number of years. I'm just going to say he has to do a lot better than this now. There cannot be another game like that. That cannot happen. I don't mind losing. I do mind losing like they've lost against the Giants, the Niners, and the Bills, in particular this game. They can't lose that way. If they carry on losing this way, I am not going to give people 2 years grace. You cannot lose this way. You cannot be that soft, ill-disciplined, badly structured. The tactics can't be as bad as they are. You've got to have answers to questions. They've got nothing at the minute. They have to be better than this. Otherwise, questions are going to be asked about the GM and the coaches. It's inevitable, and they should be asked. And we'll ask them. We'll stay on it. We'll talk about the things that maybe some others won't. Thank you for your super chats. Thank you for your comments. I hope this last hour has helped as I've just sat here reading out super chats and ranting. I hope it's been at least beneficial to some people. It's probably been more entertaining than the game, frankly. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because it really helps the channel and raises awareness, and will help others learn about the channel as well. What also really helps is comments. If you post comments in the comment section, it helps the channel. It helps this video. Please do it. And like the video as well. That is also a massive help. SeahawksDraftBlog.com. I will have the usual scouting review this week. And when the Seahawks have a loss like this, I tend to write about the team in its current state as well. Hopefully they will have a stream tomorrow with Jeff, as we usually do on Mondays. I will confirm that ASAP. So stay tuned for that. It typically happens at 2 p.m. Pacific time. So keep an eye out for that. It may be a little bit different because the clocks have gone back here, but I'll confirm the timings and everything if we are indeed doing that tomorrow. So there we go. The Seahawks are 4-4, but it feels like a bit of a mirage in the moment after watching that performance. Thank you for your super chats. Thank you for your comments. Enjoy what's left of your weekend, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.